And I think there should be a regional network leader on all of your tables. This document, which we'll be working on after morning tea, we will photocopy. So please, when you fill it in, use joined-up handwriting. We'll be using this document in the next meeting you have with the regional network leaders as a point of departure, a point of discussion in terms of your own development and your own transformational journey. So that's sort of the plan for the morning. And then this afternoon, I want us to use the sort of the reflection on the morning as a way of sort of picking up on some key themes that we can discuss, which are related to our own sort of leadership style in our schools. And the three I'm suggesting is the leading of teaching and learning, creating an infrastructure for school improvement, and managing change and change agent skills. Those are topics which we've dealt with in part before, but I have perhaps some more material which I hope will be sort of helpful for you on those topics. But we'll do a sort of a little bit of a sort of a process check over lunch to actually, particularly in light of how we do this morning in terms of what we actually focus on this afternoon. So how does that sound as a sort of a way of spending the day? I know that you've been out of school an awful lot, and some of you are not looking forward to just another day, but I hope this is going to sort of be focused much more on your own needs and trying to sort of learn from our own experience. This is the point where you can sort of walk out. But I've got the door locked anyway. But, okay, all right. So we'll give it a shot. Okay. Good. Well, let me begin to show you a little bit of data that when I worked for the British government, this was some of the data that I collected towards the end of my time in government. And this was some data which really, really worried me. What we've done here is to try and compare the performance of different student groups in two different types of school, all right? So what we've got here on this sort of side of the diagram are schools which I call low deprivation schools. These are schools which are in the leafy suburbs of Melbourne, the leafy suburbs of English cities. The metric that we use to sort of make that judgment is less than 5% of free school meals. That's the sort of metric we use in England as a proxy for deprivation, right? Free lunches. And I guess it's similar to the indicators you use here as well. Does that communicate in terms? So you've got a sense of what those schools are like, right? Leafy suburb schools describes them pretty well, I think. And then if you look at the student profiles in those schools, we've divided the student profiles into three types. Kids who come from very, very low SES backgrounds, kids who sort of don't have free school meals, are not eligible for free school meals, but come from fairly modest means, and then kids who are sort of the sons and daughters of the principal class, all right, quite affluent kids. And we've done the comparison of the performance of these youngsters in these two different types of schools, all right? So, as I guess one would expect, the youngsters who come from affluent and fairly modest means do better in the leafy suburb schools than they do in the deprived schools, right? But sadly, and this is the really sort of tough bit of news in this analysis, is that these kids do equally badly whichever school they go to, all right? And in terms of social justice in England anyway, we were really, as a government, really worried about. We were worried about this anyway, right? But we were particularly worried about sort of the performance of these of these kids who come from fairly high poverty backgrounds. All right, and although you can show international comparisons and we can sort of look good here, right? The real issue is, why are these kids doing worse in high deprivation schools, and why are these kids sort of impervious, in a sense, to what is actually happening? So for us as a government, that was a real challenge, and despite whatever has been happening in England, we haven't cracked that.